Greetings everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. What is prophesied for Libya? Does the Bible tell us anything about the future of Libya and why the things are happening which are happening today and where it is all going to lead? Before the no-fly zone was instituted and imposed, and before the attacks were launched on Libya, Germany's position on the matter was already very clear. I'd like to read to you from the German magazine Der Spiegel, which was dated March 14, and they pointed out the following. As politicians in Europe and America grapple with the issue of Libya, they are strongly influenced by the disastrous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Two predominantly Muslim countries have been attacked and occupied, also with the aim of creating a better world according to Western models. But these have not been success stories. The negative experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan have sown doubt in America and Europe about the morality of these missions. And then the article goes on to say that Chancellor Merkel and Foreign Minister Westerwelle agree that nothing good will come from a no-fly zone over Libya. Nothing good will come from such a no-fly zone. Have they been right so far? Will they be right in the future? This article goes on to say the chairman of the National Transitional Council, former Libyan Justice Minister Mustafa Abdul Jalil, is not a charismatic figure, because the magazine rightly asks the question, what's going to happen? Let's say Gaddafi should be toppled, should be ousted. What's the next step? This goes on to say his National Council is hopelessly divided and could only agree on 3 points. Gaddafi must go, the West should impose a no-fly zone, but Western troops should not fight on the ground. Nobody knows what kind of state these men want to build or what freedoms it would guarantee. And then they point out about the disastrous results in Afghanistan. You see, the German papers, after Germany abstained from the Security Council's vote, pretty much agreed that Germany's position was correct. All the major parties in Germany agree with Germany's position. The overwhelming majority of Germans agree with their government's position. Now, of course, Germany has been criticized and condemned internationally, but it is interesting that Germany might prove to be the only sane voice in this insane occurrence which we are observing right now. Nobody questions the fact that Mr. Sarkozy in France jumped ahead for his own political gains, because he is very unpopular in France and elections are coming up, and the thought is that he had to do something to be shown as the man of the hour. Well, he is not going to be the man of the hour for long. The Flensburger Tageblatt, a German paper, succinctly summarized the feelings of the German majority in this way, because they take the view that although some may find it regrettable that war where Germany abstained from the Security Council votes, those who demand a no-fly zone should be aware of the consequences. The UN resolution calls for the protection of civilians, not to overthrow Gaddafi, even though everybody's saying, no, that's our goal. Well, first of all, there is no clearly defined goal to begin with. That's part of the problem. This article goes on to say, since Gaddafi will not give up power on his own accord, the international community will not be able to avoid sending ground troops, the paper writes. Perhaps Merkel and Westerwelle will be praised of thinking ahead, like Schröder, see, the German chancellor at the time of the Iraq war, when he was praised for his refusal to participate in that war. It may be interesting to note that the bombing of Libya occurred exactly on the day, 8 years after the bombing of Iraq in 2003. In addition, Merkel is pointing out now, and the Merkel government is pointing out now, that NATO is acting terribly hypocritically. The Deutsche Welle reported today, March 25. NATO to take charge of Libya's no-fly zone, but not ground attacks. In other words, they want to rule the sky, but they don't want to rule the ground. And of course this happened because the Allies were bickering amongst themselves as to who should lead this attack. France wanted to, America didn't want to, but America didn't like France to do it. And Turkey most certainly was not happy about the fact that when the new fly zone was implemented, all kinds of attacks occurred which they said were not planned. The Arab League, originally in favor of the no-fly zone, immediately came out and condemned the actions of the Allies, specifically the United States of America, Great Britain, and France. And now Merkel is saying that they are acting hypocritically, because they say even though they are attacking Libya, they are still taking the oil from Libya. And what about though the decision by NATO to rule the sky? Now this is going to have some very negative repercussions for the United States of America, according to Deutsche Welle, because this article says NATO's agreement to take command of the new no-fly zone doesn't allow the US to make as quick an exit from the military operation as the Obama administration had hoped. American sea and air power remain key parts of the effort to keep forces loyal to Gaddafi from attacking civilians. The US, along with France and Britain, maintains primary responsibility for attacks on Gaddafi's ground forces and air defense systems, the toughest and most controversial parts of the operation. The Obama administration had sought a clear signal from NATO on the handover. Instead, it got a mixed message. And only 2 Arab nations are participating in this endeavor, Qatar, and today it was announced also the United Arab Emirates. But most are opposed to this whole situation. My friends, I have mentioned many times that we are publishing a weekly update. And we are sending this on email to everyone who would like to receive a copy. Here's just a first page of this weekly update. And it goes to many, many people, free of charge, who have subscribed to it over the email. And if you want to become a subscriber, then please just let us know. Now this update goes into biblical concepts. It has a Q&A, it has an editorial, but it also has a section on current events in the light of biblical prophecy. We are looking at what is happening today in the world, and we are explaining why this is important and where it is going to lead in accordance with biblical prophecy. See, we don't have to guess, as so many are speculating. We are just looking at the Bible. And in our update, which was published February 17, we pointed this out. At a time when the world was still focusing on Egypt, Libya was not even that much in the news then. We said, Libya is another country to watch. Historically, there have been strong alliances between Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia, and it is indicated in Scripture that a similar configuration could happen again. And then we are listing some scriptures. We are listing Jeremiah 46, the first few verses, but we also list Ezekiel chapter 30, the first few verses. I'd like to just read to you from Ezekiel chapter 30 to tell you what the Bible has to say about the future of Libya, amongst other nations in the Middle East. It says here in chapter 30, and beginning in verse 2, Woe to the day, for the day is near, even the day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, the time of the Gentiles. The day of the Lord describes a time just prior to Christ's return. This is a reference which is mentioned dozens, if not hundreds of times in the Bible. It always refers to the time beginning with God's direct intervention in world affairs just prior to Christ's return. Notice what is prophesied about this time just ahead of us. It says, the sword shall come upon Egypt, and great anguish shall be in Ethiopia, when the slain fall in Egypt, and they take away her wealth, and her foundations are broken down. Ethiopia, Libya, and then a few other countries are mentioned. All the mingled people, the men of the lands who are allied, shall fall with them by the sword. And then it says, then they will know that I am the Lord, when I have set a fire in Egypt, and all her helpers are destroyed. And on that day, God goes on to say, that day of the Lord messengers shall go forth from me in ships to make the careless Ethiopians afraid, and great anguish shall come upon them as on the day of Egypt, for indeed it is coming. So we can clearly see that an alliance is apparently going to be established between Libya and Ethiopia and Egypt against the king of the north, as Daniel points out. Now again, people are confused about the king of the north. Who is that? Now, in a subsequent update, which was published on March 10, after we reported about what was happening now in Libya, we had this to say. We read in the Bible that the land of Egypt will not escape the coming king of the north, as he is referred to in Daniel chapter 11. The king of the north is the last final military leader of a revived Roman Empire. Daniel 11 tells about the time sequence of several kings of the north, starting with the Roman Empire, its fall, its revival. And today we are seeing the last revival of the Roman Empire developing in Europe. And anybody who has studied into history a little bit knows that Europe is reviving the ancient Roman Empire. The European leaders know that. They started with the Treaty of Rome. They have said time and again, we are reviving the Roman Empire. And the last military leader of that Roman Empire, that revived human empire in Europe, will be called the King of the North in the Bible. And notice what that King of the North is going to do. It says that he is invading the Middle East. And in the context, in Daniel 11 and verse 42 and verse 43, Libya is mentioned as well. The king of the north will, quote, have power over the treasures of gold and silver and over all the precious things of Egypt. And that is just what we read in Ezekiel 30. But it goes on to say, also the Libyans and Ethiopians shall follow at his heel. Daniel 11 verse 43. What is meant by they shall follow at his heel? The Living Bible interprets saying they shall be his servants. The New Jerusalem Bible says they will be at his feet. And the Revised English Bible says they will follow in subjection to him. So we see these scriptures strongly indicating that there is going to be an alliance of these countries against a United States of Europe. And yes, it is the United States of Europe, not the United States of America. They are half-hearted leaders. They want to get out of this war. They didn't even want to start it necessarily. But the United States of Europe will ultimately, under German leadership, and that is the funny, tragic consequence of what we are seeing right now, invade the Middle East. It's not going to be France. Mr. Sarkozy would like to. It's not going to be France. The Bible is very clear that it's going to be Germany. And you see, Europe will look at Germany more and more as their leader, because Germany will prove in this endeavor that they were right, while all the other nations attacking Libya have been wrong. This war is not going to be won. It's already being compared with the Korean War. People are saying this will go on for a long, long time, unless Europe and America just withdraws from it with embarrassment. My friends, we have to continue watching what is happening in the world. And please do yourself a favor and ask for our weekly update, because we inform you about what is happening in the light of biblical prophecy. So thanks very much for watching today. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.